do a short overview of the Freedom Index, and I'm going to show you the scorecard for people in South Carolina that are congressmen in our state. With a quick look at Congressman Trey Gowdy's scorecard because he's my congressman, so this will be should be fairly quick here. So I'm going through the Freedom Index, which just came out in the latest New American Magazine. The website's not updated yet with these new numbers, so be looking for it in the next few days or so. Okay, so I'm scrolling down here, getting to South Carolina. Okay, so when I'm looking at the Freedom Index here, it shows votes 21 through 2030. These are the latest votes that have been tallied by the Freedom Index. This is a constitutional scorecard, so this lets you know if your congressman is obeying the Constitution. Mark Sanford, as you see, he's finished. There's still more votes that would be counted for a congressman, but he finished the last 10 votes 100%. Joe Wilson, 30%. Jeff Duncan, 70%. Trey Gowdy, 30%. Ralph Norman, 70%. Tom Clyburn, 20%. He's the only Democrat serving in the Congress. And then Tom Rice, 50%. Over here on the right, you get the cumulative score. 77% Mark Sanford, 53% Joe Wilson, Jeff Duncan, 70%, Trey Gowdy, 53%, Ralph Norman, 68%, Clyburn, 14%, and Tom Rice, 57%. So if I'm looking at my congressman, I'm looking at this figure, 53%. Why is it that he went down to 30%? And just keep in mind, every congressman should be a 100% because their oath is to obey the Constitution. So we want our congressmen to never break that oath to the U.S. Constitution because that's how we'll keep our constitutional republic together, is by making sure our congressmen obey that Constitution. And Mark Sanford has proven here that there are congressmen that can obey the Constitution, and he did it in the last 10 votes. Although you can see over here that he's actually been below 100% in prior Freedom Indexes. But okay, let's look at Trey Gowdy. So votes 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27. He voted unconstitutionally. 28, 29, and 30. He voted in support of the Constitution. So let's take a look at these votes. So the first 7 against the Constitution. Okay. Warrantless surveillance. During consideration of the bill S-139, reauthorized the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA, Representative Justin R. Amash introduced an amendment to end NSA collection of communications data that is neither to nor from an approved foreign target, but rather communication about a foreign target entirely between American citizens. I'm going to skip down here. The House rejected Amash's amendment on January 11, 2018 by a vote of 183 to 233. We have assigned pluses to the yeas because this amendment is an attempt to limit NSA surveillance of U.S. citizens. Warrantless surveillance of U.S. citizens is unconstitutional, and NSA surveillance certainly falls under this category. Amash's amendment would require the FBI to obtain a warrant rather than merely a FISA court approval in order to access NSA's database. So this was a good move by Amash to limit the government to its constitutional role. Trey Gowdy voted for it, so he voted against the Constitution, and that's why he received a bad vote for, or a failing vote for that vote number 21. Warrantless surveillance number 22. This bill, S-139, would reauthorize for 6 years through 2023 the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which governs electronic surveillance of foreign terrorism suspects. The bill would require the development of procedures for searching the NSA database that would protect the Fourth Amendment guaranteed rights of U.S. citizens while allowing the FBI to access information with an order from the secret FISA court in certain cases. The House passed S-139 on January 11, 2018 by a vote of 256 to 164. We have assigned pluses to the nays because FISA, which supposedly put in place to gather intelligence on foreign targets, has been used to spy on U.S. citizens. While the bill does provide provisions to ostensibly protect the privacy of U.S. citizens, given the track record of intelligence agencies, it is unlikely that they would actually follow these rules. The FISA court gives a green light to just about any surveillance request that comes its way, and FISA approved NSA warrantless surveillance of American citizens has become common knowledge. So Trey Gowdy once again failed on that vote. Should have voted against it, and he voted for it. So we have more. We still have the surveillance that goes on that American citizens are guaranteed in the Constitution not to have, but the guarantee doesn't remain if the congressmen don't obey the U.S. Constitution. So here we go. Number 23, World Bank. The World Bank Accountability Act, H.R. 3326, would authorize $3.29 billion in U.S. contributions to the World Bank's International Development Association, which discharges concessional loans known as credits and economic grants to the world's poorest and most underdeveloped countries. The House passed H.R. 3326 on January 17, 2018 by a vote of 237 to 184. We have assigned pluses to the nays because authorizing such funds to the WTO's IDA is foreign aid, which is a form of international welfare, and completely unconstitutional, and most World Bank aid further enriches plutocrats in the third world countries at the expense of the poor. And as we know, the World Bank doesn't really help the poor, it helps enrich the bad guys. So, Trey Gowdy voted for that one, and that was $3.29 billion of taxpayer money going out to the World Bank, so for that purpose. Okay, so school surveillance, number 24. The Stop School Violence Act of 2018 would authorize $75 million a year through fiscal year 2028 for the Justice Department's Secure Our Schools grant program. SOS is a grant program of the Justice Department's Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services, which has been instrumental in laying the foundations of nationalizing local police by providing federal assistance in the form of funds, equipment, training, and development of guidelines to law enforcement agencies. In a podcast interview with Conservative Review, Representative Thomas Massie said that the Stop School Violence Act was bad enough for nationalizing defense of our schools, but he further revealed there is no money in that bill that is going to go to gun control groups. It literally says in there that you can give it to the 501c3s, and then it also says there it can't go to train anybody on gun safety. It goes to go for all the liberal sort of agendas. And Trey Gowdy voted for it. The House passed H.R. 4909 on March 14, 2018 by a vote of 407 to 10. We have assigned pluses to the nays because school safety is not a proper function of the federal government, and no action the federal government has ever taken would actually make schools safe. School safety should be addressed at the local level. Furthermore, the nationalization of local police and school security, as well as any other gun control measures contained in the bill, are strictly unconstitutional. So that's vote number 4 against the U.S. Constitution by Congressman Trey Gowdy. Okay, number 25, omnibus appropriations. This bill, H.R. 1625, would provide $1.3 trillion in discretionary appropriations for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2018 for federal government operations and services. This represents an overall increase in discretionary spending of 12% over the 2017 level. The big winner was the Department of Defense with an increase of 10% over last year's appropriations. Democrat negotiators on this bill successfully fought off many Republican writers, such as a writer that would have permitted the Trump administration to withdraw the waters of the United States rule. Pro-life Republicans were saddened to learn that the omnibus bill continues the more than $500 million in taxpayer dollars Planned Parenthood receives each year. The House passed the omnibus spending bill on March 22, 2018 by a vote of 256 to 167. We have assigned pluses to the nays because with this omnibus bill, members of Congress are failing to address their fiscally and constitutionally responsible budgeting and appropriating process that is currently yielding annual federal deficits measured in the hundreds of billions of dollars, as well as minimizing their accountability to the voters by combining all discretionary federal spending for fiscal 2018 into one gigantic take it or leave it bill. So Trey Gowdy supported this bill. Totally unconstitutional. And he funded Planned Parenthood with this bill, so as did quite a majority of people in Congress. Number 26, agricultural crop subsidies. During consideration of the Farm Bill, H.R. 2, Representative Tom McClintock, Republican, California, introduced an amendment that would have phased out agricultural crop subsidies by fiscal year 2030. Scroll down here. The House rejected McClintock's amendment on May 17, 2018 by a vote of 34 to 380. Roll call was 194. We have assigned pluses to the yeas because no warrant for the appropriations of crop subsidies is found in the Constitution, and subsidies disrupt the free market economy. Trey Gowdy voted for it, so he received a failed vote on that one too. Okay, number 27. Raw milk. During consideration of the Farm Bill, H.R. 2, Representative Thomas Massey introduced an amendment to prohibit federal interference in the interstate transportation of unpasteurized milk and milk products between states that allow for the distribution of such products for direct human consumption. The House rejected Massey's amendment on May 18, 2018 by a vote of 79 to 331. We have assigned pluses to the yeas because the U.S. Constitution does not give the federal government any authority over what foods a person chooses to consume. In other words, it is illegal for the federal government to make raw milk illegal. While the federal government does have authority to regulate commerce among the several states, there is no reason for federal interference in a scenario such as this, where a product is legally sold in each of the states in question. Massey's amendment would have limited federal overreach and should have been supported. Trey Gowdy voted against it, so that's his seventh failed vote against the Constitution. We'll move on here to number 28. So 28, 29, and 30, Congressman Trey Gowdy got correct. During consideration of the Farm Bill, H.R. 2, Representative Jim Banks introduced an amendment to repeal the Environmental Protection Agency's 2015 Waters of the United States rule. On the floor of the House, Banks called this rule the poster child of government overreach during the Obama administration, noting that it gives unelected bureaucrats at the EPA the power to broadly interpret what is navigable waterway under the Clean Waters Act, so broadly that even a puddle in a farm's drainage ditch could be subjected to a federal regulation. The House adopted Banks' amendment on May 18, 2018 by a vote of 238 to 173. We have assigned pluses to the yeas because both federal water regulations and the EPA are unconstitutional, and if the rule were allowed to stand, activities such as farming and real estate development would be greatly hampered, since farmers and developers would be subject to increased unconstitutional permit requirements and fines concerning their treatments of almost any body of water, no matter how small. So Trey Gowdy, he got that one right, so that's how he got the first correct constitutional vote. Number 29, experimental drugs. This bill S-204 would allow patients with life-threatening diseases or conditions who are not participating in clinical trials to seek access to experimental and investigational drugs directly from a drug manufacturer without approval by the Food and Drug Administration. It would require that in order for the patient to be eligible, the patient must first try all approved treatment options and be unable to participate in a clinical trial. Only drugs that have completed phase 1 clinical trials that have not been approved or licensed for any use and that are currently under an active FDA application or are undergoing clinical trials would be eligible for use under the bill's provision. The House passed S-204 on May 22, 2018 by a vote of 250 to 169. We have assigned pluses to the yeas because the federal government under the Constitution has not been given authority over what medical procedures U.S. citizens should to engage in. If a person was to try an unapproved treatment, he would be able to do so with no interference from the government. In fact, since the Constitution gives the federal government no authority whatsoever over any aspect of healthcare, the FDA should not even exist. Any law that lessens government overreach into the personal medical decisions of citizens is a step in the right direction, and Trey Gowdy did get that vote correct. Last one, number 30, appropriation cuts. This bill, H.R. 3, would cut nearly $15 billion from previously approved unspent spending, including $7 billion from the Children's Health Insurance Program and $4.3 billion from the Department of Energy's Advanced Technology Vehicles Manufacturing Loan Program. The House passed H.R. 3 on June 7, 2018 by a vote of 210 to 206. We have assigned pluses to the yeas, not only because the spending falls outside the scope of constitutionally authorized federal powers, but also because the federal government needs to start reining in ballooning federal spending and debt somewhere in order to avert fiscal disaster. The cuts in this bill comprise only a fraction of 1% of total federal government spending, and according to the Congressional Budget Office, most of the funding targeted by the bill would not be spent anyway, yet modest cuts are better than none at all. Okay, that's the Freedom Index for the House of Representatives. I'm not going to go into the one for the U.S. Senate. Rand Paul, the only one who got 100% on the U.S. Senate Freedom Index for this second session of, or the second Freedom Index of 2018. These you can order from thenewamerican.com, I think in the next few days. So if you want to order these, take these to your Tea Party group, your Republican group, your Democrat Party group, whatever you're part of, maybe your local school board, just to let people know how your congressmen are voting. Everybody in politics says, oh, we need to get our people to obey the Constitution. Well, this is the way you get them to obey the Constitution. You put the Freedom Index in front of them, and you let people know how your congressmen are voting. And if they're not voting correctly, according to the Constitution, it's time to get new congressmen. And anyways, this is the tool that all Americans need to be using, and it's produced by the John Birch Society. We are an Americanist organization, and we are trying to restore our constitutional republic the best that we can. We're going to make America better than it's ever been, and we need your help in doing so. So please consider joining the John Birch Society if you've listened to this, and take action. Spread the Freedom Index around and make sure people know how your congressman is voting. Thank you so much for watching this, and if you would, subscribe to my YouTube channel and share this video with others. Thank you so much.